Hi, Paul.
Hi, Eddie. Nice to be back with you again.
Yeah, and we're going to have some nice conversations, and I want to ask you a question because you know a bit about music, and you especially know quite a lot about improvisation. Now, I got a lot of friends who are musicians, and they might worry about improvisation. So, in a nutshell, not quite in a nutshell, but why is improvisation such a stigma to many, do you think?
I suppose, even the word, isn't it, is kind of a stigma. I mean, they once asked the great jazz musician Wayne Shorter, they said, what is jazz or improvisation? And he said, jazz is I dare you. And I thought that was a lovely analogy for what improvisation is. But then I always start to think back about the composers you love and that I love. And I always think, well, those pieces that are in the repertoire today were essentially come from the imaginal realm, but they were essentially improvised. I don't know why, but I always imagine Beethoven playing Moonlight Sonata and think, I have to write it down now. Because he kind of improvised it. And, the stories go that Bach was a great improviser, that Beethoven was a great... Mozart had these, essentially what you call cutting competitions, where he would outplay another musician with a simple theme delivered to them. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that we have lost sight of improvisation, and in jazz, of course, a lot of the time it might be that it's swung, but it doesn't necessarily have to be swung. Jazz isn't always swung; it can be even.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so in most music, the quavers are what we call even, which would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. In jazz, the quavers are slightly disrupted. Now, musically, classical musicians think about a dotted quaver, semiquaver. Now, if you listen, that's still not swing. If you notice, it's quite regimental. 1 and, 2 and, 3 and. Swing is this slightly longer first note and a slightly shorter second. But it's not. That's still too regimental.
Yeah, I see.
So there's this. So jazz essentially swings, but I don't think that's any different from a guitar solo in an Eric Clapton pop song or a John Mayer pop song. I think that's jazz. It's just not swinging in the jazz tradition. Now, I think there is this, like you said, there is this fear about improvising. So the first thing I do with any students, and I don't teach so much beginner students these days, but I was doing it with my son just a few days ago, is put the hands on the black notes, put your foot on the sustain pedal, and often I'll say, this is the scene, and I'll set a scene. Last night was somebody was just walking into the sea on the road, and my son just tried to improvise something to the image, and then he said, give me another, and then and then when I said it was a bit more sinister, I went to the dark end. And so anyway, that's what I do. I try and cultivate improvising in the first instance.
So that's good, because I mean that you lose lots of worries and boundaries, don't you? You just dive in, don't you?
Yeah.
And you experiment.
Don't fear it.
You play, don't you? You don't worry about what the structure.
Crotchets or quavers, or even that thing I did. You don't worry about counting that out. You just go to the piano humble to create something.
So that's that. But when people start, trained musicians or people who've been studying music a long time, and they have a concept of harmony and chord structures, etc. And they might read music. I suppose that the thing is, you could use a score that you read, and you could improvise on that. Now, would play, to play like a child would. Yeah. Is that a good way just to do and not worry too much and just go for it? So you're nicking someone's tune, and you just play with different notes, different chords, and you're just playing and maybe even smiling and perhaps singing a bit with it as well. Yeah. You could sing melodies and try and put it on.
I think this is a great idea. Take, for example, like Bach's Prelude No. 1, which is the famous one. Well, play the notes back to front. Ba boo boo boo, ba boo boo boo.
Yeah.
Play them in a different order. Boo boo, hey oo, hey oo.
Yeah.
Change the order, play it as a chord. Play them separately. That would be a way of taking some baby steps towards improvising.
So something like you look at a piece of music and say it's based on chords and there's runs off these chords. You could just take the chords and then create your way of connecting them up and things like
Absolutely.
that too.
Now that's what I used to do when I was like 12, the Chopin Prelude number 4 in E minor, because dee da 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 da, you know, so I'd start dee da da ooh ooh do, and then be Paul, Caroline, my piano teacher, said, play the notes. Anyway, I told my dad, and we whinged, and then I changed teacher because I really wanted to be able to do that, but she wouldn't allow me to put the extra notes in between.
So really, so you're using something that somebody's already written, and you're improvising on that, playing around with it. Let's get rid of improvising for now.
Yeah,
you're
playing
just,
around.
You're using what somebody has, and you just put your own thing to it. But I guess part of that improvisation, that freedom, is not to worry about any sense of wrong and right.
No.
And you're going to do some notes, and if you might, so you're playing something, and we worry about what key you're in, what this. So if you go out, then go with it, I guess, and make a bit of, some bad sound in a sense, but you might resolve into something. And the thing is not to be too precious about it. Then, if you're just improvising, practicing, and of course, once you get more used to it, there'll be structures in that. Then you could do that in front of people, couldn't you?
Absolutely. So I think that's a really, top tip, is to dive into improvising from something you already know. Just play the notes in a different order, and I think that would be my top tip.
And I think with that, you'd hear it better, wouldn't you? You'd develop your ear, wouldn't you?
You would.
And you would sing it within. So you'd be singing and almost within, and you, after a while, you'd be able to know where you're going a little bit with it. Of course, there's always improvisatory nature of it.
And you would also understand the harmony, wouldn't you? Like you're suggesting, from a bit more from the inside, because you've seen it in a different order.
Yeah.
I think that would be...
So like a chord, so I don't know, triad or something. You could swap the notes around, couldn't you? Yeah,
that's right. Once you spot it's a C chord and the C's on the bottom, you might put the C on the top, or that E minor prelude I talked about. You might change the voicing of the E minor. Mm-hmm. This gets you away, particularly if you're classical musicians, from not improvising, and it gives you some structure. Because jazz musicians kind of play from lead sheets, so there's just a melody, and they make up the rest of it. You know, well, that might seem a bit daunting for some classical players, but to go from, play a Mozart with the Alberti bass, do and instead of dee da da dee da da da, just do that backwards or something.
Yeah.
And find a note in between the note.
So do you think also, because we alluded to it a moment ago, about a bit of laughter and a bit of fun and silliness is actually, because then you just
absolutely. It's undoing what you know to see what you can find. I was very lucky to play in a band in my late teens, and the conductor had one rule. He said, if we get lost, he used to say, stay lost.
That's good. I like that. Stay lost.
Stay lost.